Shalom Chavrim, I'm Steve Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Today we have a very special guest that my wife is going to introduce, Doug, and let you introduce because you know all that information.
Yes, we have on with us special guest, Dr. Doug Hogan. And the reason we brought him on is that I got hold of his book, Seeing Through the Singularity, Uncovering the Cosmic Conspiracy. And this is a wonderful book, very timely for the times we are seeing right now. Welcome, Dr. Hogan, with us on the show. Thank you for coming and welcome here.
Jana and Steven, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, well, I would like to introduce you a little further to our listeners. So let me allow me to please read your little biography on the back of your book. Douglas Hogan is a lecturer of political science at South Texas College. Hogan's research focuses on the history of ideas and the epistemic construction of empire. In addition to several articles, he has published The Epistemic Origins of American Empire in 2007 and How 19th Century Naval Theorists Created America's 20th Century Imperialist Policy. He wrote that in 2010. He is a professor for over 15 years, serving at several institutions, including Brooklyn College, Wagner College, University of Alaska, Mississippi State University, and South Texas College. Seeing Through the Singularity, Uncovering the Cosmic Conspiracy extends the history of ideas and the epistemic construction of empire into man's final political project, the creation of a new cosmic order. Wow, final political project, new cosmic order. And now we have this coronavirus epidemic. So that kind of ties into all of that you wrote here, Dr. Hogan. So would you tell us what is going on right now?
Well, I do have a take on that. The virus, I think, serves a lot of agendas. I think it's going to damage the economy, move us into a single sort of, I don't know, you can use financial system. I think it's serving an agenda dealing with vaccines. It's certainly directing worldwide political power toward Jerusalem and the Noahide laws, Jana, that you've spoken so eloquently about. But ultimately, there's even a further cosmic objective, which is to create a new cosmic order, which again would have to do with a relationship between our order here and an ethereal realm. And Gnostics are always big on that. They're about bringing opposites together, male and female, the political left and the political right. Heaven and earth, ultimately, is what they want to bring together. It's sometimes been referred to as the immunization of the eschaton, but that's the final project. It could even be stated as that sort of blueprint of the Jewish utopia, which is a project to kind of take, certain elements of the Old Testament and sort of self-deification and make this a reality. It's an unfinished work, and that's one part of it that I explored in the book.
Yes, and they're certainly bringing this to reality as we speak, Dr. Hogan. And you have cited the Jewish Utopia, right? This is the book by Michael Heger, PhD, Dr. Heger, I think that's how you pronounce it, where you're citing him in your book, I think, if I'm correct. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes, the Jewish Utopia. I have brought you this book as well before to your attention, to our listeners' attention, because whatever we're seeing right now happening, basically they have described it right here.
It's the outline.
And you are writing about this, and you have mentioned several agendas. Do you think there are several opinions on whether the virus is real, it's a hoax, or it was a bioweapon? So we are getting conflicting messages even from the media. You are seeing complete panic, right? You go to store,
Yes.
everybody is handing out those disinfectants. Restaurants now you cannot eat at certain hours in a restaurant, or they
Well,
cannot
no, what it
fill
is-
up to full
Right.
capacity.
And they have to do like every other table or something, according
Right.
to some of
Yesterday
the
we
people
went out with children just to kind of keep normalcy in life. We wanted to go out with them, and they couldn't sit. Only every other table. In some parts of the country, they're totally closed down. Like you cannot even go into
Yeah.
any restaurants anymore. You can only eat through drive-throughs and stuff. So very much the panic is encouraged through media. So and at the same time they are
Yeah.
putting out this kind of message: the virus is only causes mild symptoms in healthy population, and you can recover within 2 weeks. It's only dangerous for older population with compromised immune systems, and you can still recover within 4 to 6 weeks. So if that's true, right, why such panic?
Well, I do have a take on this. It's something that hasn't been discussed, and obviously, fear is the main button being pushed here. But I am going to suggest an idea that's a little more nuanced, which has to do with chaos magic. And you're going to notice there, Jana, on the front of my book, that sigil. That's the sigil for chaos magic.
Yes.
It's kind of a postmodern part of the occult world. It's sometimes referred to as the punk rock of occult science, and it's very purpose directed. It came about in the late 1970s in conjunction with chaos science, chaos magic, chaos science, and the purpose, one feeds off the other. But before I go into that and give you some examples of chaos magic with the pandemic, and think of the word pan and pandemic, it's kind of interesting there. It's got a little mythology to it.
Yes, that's true.
Let me talk just for a moment about chaos. I think a theme from the beginning to the end of the cosmos, as the Bible describes it, really has to do with a conflict or an inversion between order and chaos. So they are inversely related. In a biblical perspective, God has a certain order, or we would call it an ontology, a relationship between God, man, and society. Magic or chaos magic tries to invert and problematize that order. In the same way that we're asked in the Bible to have an orderly mind, or James would say, don't have a divided mind. Chaos magic attempts to divide our mind and so sever our relationship to the cosmos. And again, I'm trying to slow down and not throw too many things in there at once. But that's part of what's going on here with these particular techniques of science, I should just say chaos. It's to upset our minds in relation. And what happens to be going on right now is a worldwide invocation of chaos magic to put us over into the ethereal realm and have a relationship with this ethereal realm in a very broad and purposeful way. Mm-hmm. But again, let me say, before I get into chaos magic and some recent examples,
Right.
Let me say something else about chaos.
Okay.
It's kind of strange, and I don't think Christians necessarily think about this. But the order of the Bible went from beginning to end. In God's ontology, he goes from order to chaos. The inverse perspective, we call Hermeticism, Gnosticism, goes the opposite, from chaos to order. And I'll slow it down because it's kind of intriguing. So God, or you could say Elohim, has perfect order within itself. And he throws in the creation of the world randomness. And from randomness, we have free will, from which the angels will rebel and and Adam and Eve will partake of the fruit. But he throws random. He has an ordered world, but randomness is thrown into the creation. In the inverse perspective, we could call it, Gnosticism, if you like. Let's do that. And I'll call Gnosticism a sort of Judaized paganism. In the Gnostic view, the world begins with chaos, sort of the Big Bang kind of thing. There's maybe nothing, maybe almost nothing, but it's circling around, and somehow, boom, order comes into, almost inexplicably, into the world. And the job of the Kabbalist, the Gnostic, the wizard, the sorcerer, is to somehow harness that chaos. And here, let's slow down here. From a Christian perspective, creation is the Elohim. He's the only being that can, but the inverse order wants to kind of think man, the wizard, by harnessing the chaos becomes creativity. So chaos is creativity. And whether it's the Hermetic tradition or the Gnostic tradition, it's always chaos out of order. It's about either how to apprehend that chaos or actually create it in order to direct it toward a particular, eschatological or any end of the scientist's desire. So from there we get Hegel, and he's going to come into play, and he's going to make a science out of this, combining. He'll take his dialectics and kind of really figure out in an almost, he would say, scientific way how to take these things toward a particular direction. He's talking about meta-belief systems, sort of meta-alchemy, and moving the world in toward this desired direction. Mm-hmm. And so with Hegel, when we see this, what he's really doing is talking about the ethereal realm, the dark side. Just like the alchemists are, that trick, when Pharaoh puts his cane down and it becomes a snake, is it in the perception, or was there really a transformation? Either way, he's tapping into the ethereal realm. There's ways people have always done this. They could do it through, anything from necromancy, all the things the Bible prohibits, necromancy, gematria. These days we talk about astro surfing and remote viewing, and so it's all these methods. Chaos magic is just one of the more modern methods that picks and pokes at all of these, but with a particular objective in mind, and that's moving, I believe, the world in this sort of upon this rendezvous with destiny. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit about that, tapping into this conscious cosmic consciousness is just another phrase, or we'll talk about it in just a second, the quantum level or quantum entanglement. But I'm going to slow down before I talk a little bit more about the corona, and let me know if I'm losing you here a little bit.
No. Everybody just put it simply like everybody is familiar with United States dollar, where it says order out of chaos. So they're basically unleashing this chaos. It's all pre-planned. They know what they're doing through fear and chaos.
It's directed down on the back of the bill. It's directed toward putting the last piece on. Exactly.
And then they want to bring as a solution an order. But it
that's the piece. The eyeball is the ethereal realm coming into the mix.
Right. They are actually unleashing Kabbalah. They're unleashing Kabbalah right now.
That's exactly right.
On worldwide.
And even before I get into the chaos part, let me mention this. When you talk about Hermeticism or Kabbalah and this modern science, there are certain assumptions that are always there about reality, about God's ontology. But number one, and this is a language that would have sounded so goofy just 30 years ago if you weren't a mystic, but it's just all over TED Talks and the Barnes and Noble bookshelves, this idea that you and me are one. But yet somehow I could be here in another place at the same time. This idea we're living in a simulation. And ultimately this idea that reality is an illusion. And so when you start pounding people with that, of course they're going to have cognitive dissonance and some sort of mental breakdowns when you don't think that, you're just busting at the seams God core ontology about just common sense that you're there, I'm here. But that's where it's getting us to. When we start getting that structure of beliefs, then we go into the entanglement part. I'll pause another second and talk a little bit about chaos magic.
So sorry about the pause, guys. There, we're just having a little technical difficulty we wanted to take care of. So thank you for your patience. All right, so we continue
Yes.
on.
So we were talking about chaos and how they want to bring this order out of chaos and unleashed Kabbalah. So would you like to start right there?
Well, obviously, it's not hard to track two things right now: fear and chaos. You know, and you look at the shelves being cleaned up. It's very chaotic right now, and the chaos is in our minds, and it produces fear and cognitive dissonance and all that. The interesting element, there's many interesting elements to chaos magic, and again, this comes out in the late 1970s in conjunction with chaos science. But chaos magic, one element that I'm intrigued by, throws in this sort of Discordian element, which plays on ideas like absurdity. So you got a fear with things just not matching up or making sense, and then just the absurd. And that's an interesting twist when you bring that into the mix. So of course the fear is not hard to put your finger on, but you know, the absurd, or things just not adding up. Of course, the virus is not dangerous, but yet we're taking these proportions, and people, you know, they get the facts, but yet they're taking the emotions. But the absurd, you know, just over the last week, throwing this into the mix, toilet paper.
I know.
You know,
I know.
like when I went to the store, because I didn't want to get totally left in the dust. I wasn't watching canned goods and stuff like that. I mean, that was the last thing on my mind, is having 6 months of toilet paper.
I know.
But anyway, there's an absurdity there. I think of the whole democratic process, and again, I'm kind of opinionated this way, but there's an absurdity, I think, just generally with the democratic process, but in particular. And I don't think this is, this is by design. You know, we have a candidate that has kind of a one-man kind of carnival appearance, very off-kilter. The Democratic debates, not that I watch them that carefully. The front runner looks like he's kind of losing his mind in a kind of a comical way. Doesn't know what town he's in, who he's speaking to, and he's the front runner.
I know.
And then you look at one of the candidates who drops out, has a rap video. Back that ass up. Sarah Palin this week is out hopping around, former candidate in a bunny suit, singing, she likes big butts. I mean, so it hits the circuits, and the talk show hosts, again, I just get this secondary, I like big butts. And so, I mean, it's absurd. And so the talk show hosts are putting this, and the whole Democratic, it's serious, but it's seriously absurd. And I think something unique happens in the mind. And what it does is it puts us from chaos magic, and it's very goal directed, to put us into now chaos science. And chaos science is the quantum realm. And the quantum realm is just kind of materialistic code word for the ethereal realm. And this idea that we break down, it was kind of smuggled in through the materialists, who are, in fact, the creators of this were, alchemists in the first place. It's kind of smuggled in the late 1970s to examine something material. But of course, when you go to the subatomic or the quantum level, it breaks down, the foundation breaks down, it goes into a bottomless pit, and it becomes mysticism again. So it goes back to the pantheism, where I am you, you are me, I can be here and there at the same time, and reality breaks down. Our consciousness breaks down, order breaks down, and again, then we're at the hands of the authorities we've been in our whole life socialized to respect and adhere to. So,
yeah, I think what you just described is a pre-planned programming for a specific desired results they want to see in a population. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, it'll go from, accept the authority, accept the martial law, accept the quarantine, accept the one world financial system, and, accept the Noahide.
Noahide laws ultimately.
Well,
yes.
the sad thing is, though, this is exactly, though, Doug, what the people are doing. No matter how hard we drive these things in, this is exactly what they're doing. The people you can warn them. You can tell them about Noahide laws. You can tell them about a beast system. You can tell them about the Kabbalah, what the, all the mind control. In fact, last night they had the guy on the news there as he was speaking to the people. And what's that? I forget the name of that expression that he's using there. But
we are all in it together. It was almost like a MK
MK Ultra. That's it. That's what I was trying to think
MK Ultra style programming.
And that is monistic pantheism. The all is what we're all chasing. Which, again, there's always the bringing of opposites, but then the other half, because you always want to have plausible denial of these belief systems. So, but then they're all kind of an illusion. Opposites are an illusion as well.
Yes.
But yeah. So I mean, one thing I was fascinated by waking up was how people are bewitched, what the Bible speaks about, and that's why I created this idea of the egregore, the angel over Jerusalem, that piece by piece, as this puzzle develops, village by village, individual by individual, community by community, we get hooked into the ethereal realm when we accept the inversion of God's order and his plan. And so there are central tenets that go in a row. I'll say this one, and I'll do this in 60 seconds.
Okay.
I mention in my book, because I think it's foundational, I'll do it in 60 seconds, that God has a cosmic order that he's very explicit about, which is that he's outside of creation. That makes it different from pantheism. The earth is fixed, not stationary. Hell is below us. There's 3 levels of heaven. And, both, Wolfgang Smith, the best current physicist, and the number of ones I cited out of the Enlightenment, what they did recognize is the heliocentric view was precisely the inverse of that. So you can accept it or not accept it. My take is the struggle in the Bible, this whole struggle between order and chaos, is our consciousness, which is the image of God imprinted upon us. And the angelic realm, the unseen realm, the quantum realm, the ethereal realm, hates that about us. That's what they come to kill, steal, and destroy, and mangle up. So that's a headstone for that piece. That necessarily needed to get there in order to do process theology, Darwinianism. And so that's where you get the process of self-deification has to be part of this process. So once that is laid, the heliocentric model, you have an infinitely expanding universe, and it becomes possible through timelines to create evolution or process theology. One book after another, before you get to the point, and I know this is something that's fascinated both of you, especially Stephen, is how you can read the Bible. It's just so explicit, and come away with this Zionist theology. But people do. It's one brick at a time, and the old-fashioned terminology would be, it's demonology. But it's not. It's a chunk at a time until you're just you're beyond duped at it. You're just kind of fully embracing this Antichrist system, and you'll do it explicitly and not understand your own double-mindedness about it because you've been demonized. Does that sound crazy?
No, and you one of the points you made that I thought is very interesting that many believers totally ignore, and that is God is outside of creation, because Jesus himself actually says, "My kingdom is not of this world," but yet everything about the Kabbalistic Zoharic system that they're bringing on this earth, with a completely different Messiah, that the
Yes.
Christians are just they're like
Bewitched.
magnetized to it,
Yeah.
and yet it's like everything that Jesus ever said, ever taught, is completely out the door.
Right, and it's the ultimate inversion. And it says the great thing about this, and the Bible speaks about this great falling away. What could be the most perfect inversion than the Christians are building the Antichrist system by themselves. They are the foundation of this. It's the most perfect, ultimate and final inversion, which I've called, the inversion of earthly Jerusalem. It's the final piece of this construction of this egregore, or we could put an eyeball on top of it, maybe. But
yes. Now you mentioned egregore, and I can guarantee you that 99% of our listeners have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. Can you please explain?
It was such an undeveloped concept that I just took the license to go with it and develop it. I don't know. It's just my opinion of how I just felt I had a license to work with it because it was completely undeveloped. It's been kind of de-occulted recently, and it's been used in corporations through logo and this idea that there's a psychic energy. But we can go back to the power of positive thinking and kind of creating our own reality, and that's kind of embedded in there as well, and that's kind of modern speak, but it was part of the ancient world. In fact, when you conquered a city in the ancient world, you had to somehow kind of bind the egregore, and I found that fascinating. But I think I just kind of like the connection between, I think at some point after the Babylonian captivity, it became something, it embraced the dark side, and it's been part of this project ever since. And let me just add this, because I do think there's something beyond the Noahide laws, which the game here is consciousness. The two moments are the Babylonian moment and the moment in Revelation, when we're all of one voice and one mind. And those that, of course, that's depopulation. Those that can't get with the program have to be eliminated. But that's the moment, and the apprehension of that consciousness all at once, because it's one of the most potent parts of the entire Bible when God says if they can do that, they can do anything. I mean, we can't even, our imaginations can't even go, but it has something to do, I think, with crashing portals and possibly really, and that's probably why God might have to create a new heaven and a new earth. It's been severely damaged by that act.
I actually believe that he is going to, he has to completely destroy this matrix, because this earth is under different god, and it's not almighty. It's Satan is the god of this world, as Apostle Paul clearly explained it, and they have created this matrix in here, demonic matrix, Kabbalah, that is based on Kabbalah, Talmud, and Zohar, which we know that Kabbalah is basically soul of the Talmud. It's the soul of the Zohar. And when you mentioned this egregore, is that a demon? That you can you?
Yes, and part of pantheism, while we're being demonized, we build the beast. And yes. I like your take on the beast system, Stephen. I don't think it's necessarily different from. I think it can kind of be layered on top of it. But yes, we're building that beast.
Yes,
and that's the egregore. Sometimes I want to say it is the beast, and then we can think of the two beasts. But I didn't try to solve every last puzzle, but I want us to kind of get thinking about this. The goal was to maybe, if something could click, maybe some people could start bewitching, or bewitching themselves.
Bewitching, exactly. Yes.
You are absolutely correct in the fact that it is Christians are bewitched who are building this beast system, giving the power to the beast, as they are supporting the Zionist agenda and the Jewish utopian kingdom, the earthly kingdom in Jerusalem. They're supporting it financially, and every way you can imagine. So if it wasn't for that, they couldn't be this. Do you think they would be this successful if they didn't get support of Christians?
No. Well, there's who can war against the beast? I mean, it seems like we're trying to do that.
Wow.
We're simply reading straightforward scripture.
Yes.
Things like, what is the Antichrist? Well, people that don't accept that Jesus is Christ. I remember your conversation with Pastor Begley over there. I mean, it's just like so rudimentary. So
Basic.
Don't yoke yourself with them. Who's the enemy of the gospel? There. Don't yoke yourself with them. Think of our foreign policy.
Right. Exactly.
How could that be more clear? I don't know. But how could you not? I mean, it's not like you have to have a theology degree to get that.
It's basic Christian.
You listen to Christian Industrial, the Christian Industrial Radio, or the complex, and there's not another message. So I guess, of course, through repetition and chaos magic, people can't read it.
You know what I see with this whole situation, Doug, is it's going back even to the days of when Jesus was here, and he's imprisoned. And this is what the church has done today. They have imprisoned Christ once again, and we're set back. The stage is set. They have a choice of Barabbas or Christ. And
yes.
And of course, it was Judas, the apostle, and this new apostolic reformation that backed Trump, which called themselves apostles.
Right. And they're going to throw Jesus under the bus.
That's right. Because see, the scripture has to be fulfilled. And as you noted the passage a moment ago, the power is given to the beast. So, see, God, when Christ came, his mission gave us power over the devil to rule and to bind Satan where he was. Now, Satan cannot get out of that prison. Satan is now the Barabbas that is in prison. He's the murderer. He's in the prison. So it would take time for the Christian people to reject Christ, again sell him out, and give the power over to the beast and free Barabbas. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, and I happen to take a millennialist perspective, and I see that binding there, and that would be of the millennial reign, and that's the loosening right now, the end of that reign. And so, that kind of problematizes all the crazy dispensationalist, contorted timelines. But I see that working perfectly, what you just said about the binding.
Yes.
Okay, let's get back to your book. Okay. You have in chapter, I think, let me go here. Chapter, my eyes, I'm sorry, I can't see.
Well, you're trying to see it. I want to mention one other thing.
Chapter 7. Go ahead, Steve.
One other thing, because I don't want to get too far away from it, because you were talking earlier about, and I forget the wording you used, but it was about how the people, they just kind of go along with the program, and they just comply with what they're doing. And one of our sources right out of D.C. said that their favorite expression that they use in the circles at the White House are those that are non-compliant. He said they love that term, non-compliant. These are the ones they got to deal with. So.
Right, they're going to have to eliminate the ones who are not able to deprogram, as you said. By the way, before I go into chapter 7 in your book, but that's what I want to talk about a little bit. But what do you think with this elimination of those who are not able to deprogram, there will be a persecution of Christians who do not go along with this new world agenda they're creating?
If
right?
you don't free Barabbas, what will happen?
What do you think about that? And then,
that's what the Bible says. Yeah, it's pretty clear. There's the beheading in the Talmud, and then there's the beheading in the Book of Revelation. So I think there's kind of matching up there. I do think the method of execution will probably be, I think Islam will be the broom. Probably through Sharia, I imagine. But the timelines and all that, that's what's kind of seems to be maybe happening faster than we imagined.
Right. Who would ever believe they're going to go right now to this kind of chaos that they created worldwide? That I personally, I thought we have a little more time. I didn't think they're as ready, but look, they're surprising us. They are more ready than we thought.
Is it not? Yeah. Was it this Rabbi Kisan that actually said that we'll send them to Saudi Arabia, or was it a different rabbi?
That was for the Arabs. That was for the Arabs in the Middle East. But
okay, I thought he was talking about those Gentiles. Well, I guess he could be
Gentiles living in Israel. They don't want Gentiles in Israel that do not comply with the Noahide laws. And just for our listeners, and I don't know if you, Dr. Hagen, if you know that it's not only the Education Day USA that they're signing. By the way, they're going to re-sign it April 4th this year. It's not only that it's re-signed in the White House. What I have learned past 2 days is that every single senator of the 50 states, governor, I'm sorry,
across the United States,
governor across the United States, of every single state in the United States, all 50 states have signed the new Noahide laws for the particular state.
Right.
So now with
It's going down in Russia. Yeah.
yes, and now with schools closing, and now some districts are speaking about, oh, it will be only 2 weeks, but now they're extending it. Once they,
the rest of the school year is now closed.
Now it's the rest of the school year. So to me, I'm really afraid that they're going to redo the curriculum and put Noahide laws in the curriculum. So.
Well.
I'm not.
Yeah,
saying, I mean, this is.
Yeah, there's.
Speculation.
That's usually the signal when you. There's a whole series of politics that looks at when change happens, because there's usually equilibrium, and then during dramatic events, an opportunity window opens up, and so that's usually the time of dramatic change. So something like what you just suggested makes a lot of sense.
It's a conjecture. That's just a conjecture. It's not something I know. I'm just afraid.
It just seems odd that at this time that the things that are happening. That there's a possibility that world governments will actually enact a new curriculum, and it seems plausible because of the fact that all these governors are passing the Noahide laws in the first place, and they're really big on what Schneerson said, that it was more important for the moral education of the kids than it was for their academic education.
Yes, it's on our Patreon. We have posted video from 2016 Noahide conference in United Nations, and on that particular conference, there were representatives from several countries, and one rabbi, a representative, and I'm not sure which country, it was United States. He has suggested that Menachem Mendel Schneerson is basically the picture of this morality and education, and in all schools throughout United States and the world, and that the education of morality and Noahide laws supersedes any academic education. So
when you're talking of an idea that just goes through my head, I think this is the timing of more, this is a violation of church and state. So when we think about a breaking away of a grand false church and a remnant, this would be really a cleavage kind of concept, whether you're going to stand up for separation of state or not, stay with your 503 state-sponsored church and take that direction, or find fellowship elsewhere.
Yes, and that's pure speculation. We don't know if this is going to happen. So if it doesn't happen, I'll be very happy. I'm just worried about it as the new knowledge that all the 50 states have signed Noahide laws now separately. So this is something to think about. Okay, chapter 7, A Tale of Two Blockchains. Can you tell us about it? What is a blockchain? In what sense did you write about this? What is the tale of two blockchains?
It's my favorite chapter.
Well, no, there is a chapter that your favorite, I think, is the chapter 9, the blockchain of being.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
But
there's a blockchain of being and a blockchain of becoming.
Right.
So
can you
blockchain
tell
of
us?
being is God's ontology, it's reality. The blockchain of coming is this process of self-deification, and this actualization of the alternative cosmos, the alternative order. So God's, moving his blockchain of being, the order's in place. It's a revealed message to anybody that wants to get on board and become part of God's singularity, joining the body of Christ, and finishing being brought to the Father and the creation of a new heaven and a new earth. And or the alternative would be the blockchain of coming. The tricky concept there is like the Ouroboros. It's kind of hard to get your head around that idea.
Yes.
But it gets into the manipulation of time and so forth. But always becoming the serpent always we're all, even the demons, are stuck in this time prison, right? And if they know their kind of time is up, how are you gonna work with what few choices you really have ultimately? But yeah, that's the distinction between the two, and it kind of started with this idea between order and chaos. The blockchain of becoming is about optimizing, producing, harnessing chaos to bring this certain eschatological end into being.
Now, before we go into anything else, I want to show another two sources that you used in your book. Of course, a book, Kabbalah Secrets Christians Need to Know by author D.N. Lauper. I think we have talked about this particular book right here. I'm showing it to you. Still accessible on Amazon. By the way, Dr. Hogan's book is available on Amazon as well. It's very affordable. So go ahead and purchase it while
let me
you
just
can.
seriously say this.
Although
Order
Amazon
the book
is,
while you have the chance.
Amazon stopped any, they're not going to deliver anything right now. So unfortunately, they have said that nothing except medical supplies. But order it anyway, and maybe if this
as soon
passes,
as we get a
then,
little open, you would get the book.
Yes.
It is an amazing book.
Then also this is what you wrote about in your book. You did, and I have a question. How did you understand certain thing in this book by Joel David Bax, the Josephic Messiah, Leviathan, Metatron, and Sacred Serpent? Now these books are pro Kabbalah, and they explain from the Jewish view of Kabbalists what they are doing in the world and how they're bringing about this Jewish kingdom. And Joel Bax is talking about serpent being an AI in a Garden of Eden.
The techno serpent, yeah.
Right, techno serpent, techno spirituality. Can you? I'm sure you read about this. Can you explain? So they don't always hear it just from me.
I just, I'm the biggest Deanne Loper fan you can find. I think it's the best book you can possibly get, and I just snipped her ideas, especially regarding that, because she has a real gift for taking those sources and making it into an accessible language. Yes. So I bask just watching his videos, a little bit of a mind bender there, but she was able to patiently sit through these texts and translate them essentially into something Christians should give a chance. They should really give her take a chance. But I've been looking at this for quite a few years. I've never seen anybody that's able to take these texts and present them the way that she had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically they are combining, or to them, technology is part of the Kabbalah. And now, which we talked about this, look at this surveillance technology. It starts with surveillance, but it's actually beyond what we can even imagine. And they are unleashing it more and more, like now breaking news, right? And let me read this too. This just like fresh off the press, a few hours ago. Breaking news. Israel starts controversial surveillance of virus carriers, sends SMS, which is text messages, to order 400 people who were nearby to immediately enter isolation. So can you imagine that you get a text and they're watching you, that you are to go to isolation? Or let's say you have, you cough or something on the street, and then they send you a message, can you please show up at the next checkpoint for a temperature check? I mean, they're using this thing that is happening right now to take our freedoms and install this Orwellian style of society. Yeah. Do you agree with me?
Yes. Yeah. We have a pretty similar take. Stephen, I watched your video on the Mark of the Beast and your revelation with the rule of iron and AI and technology, and extended that into quantum entanglement. And that would include things like CERN. The strange take I have, it's ultimately the ultimate take into the ethereal realm requires our consciousness. So I'm saying technology is still a means to apprehend our consciousness. The game here is our consciousness. And that's the fingerprint of God that people will trade in for the image of the beast. And I had a funny thought. Let me get your take on this, Stephen. The idea in Revelation that people will worship the statue. Could you imagine that being like kind of a celebration of the completed work of the statue of Daniel?
That's
and
always
it's thinking of before Christ comes and smashes it, that you're going to take this completed work of all the oligarchs and their mystery schools throughout all the age, and this is kind of that something to play with.
Well,
interesting.
This is it's interesting that you say that, because in reality, that's what I see in the book of Daniel, as I was recently trying to break this down for people as well. And also you're looking at the book of Revelation, where you have the teeth of iron, and then it mentions the toes, but the toes, brass and the word serpent are synonymous. It's nachash. They can put a different vowel, but it's still a nachash. So that made me wonder, is that an AI serpent? And then I couple that with the one source that I had in Israel that knew the people that are working, specifically the owner of the company. It doesn't even, you can't even tell me the name of the company. It's so top secret in Israel. It's not on exchange, no trading stocks or anything, but they are working with, as he put it, alien entities, and with IQs that are 1,000 plus. Now he said I think it's 9,000, but the actual owner said no, they've got about 1,000 IQ, and they're trying to find a certain genetic strand amongst the Kohanim bloodline and mix this with AI technology.
Yeah.
And so there. So when you mentioned this, the statue of Daniel. Is this really what Daniel was seeing? Because if we go back in Daniel, we see that the feet are iron and clay mixed.
They cannot mix.
Yeah, they can't mix. But the point is, though, is that you're dealing with human, and you're dealing with artificial intelligence being intertwined together, possibly. And that has to be a conjecture. I can't say that emphatically, but it's almost like what they're trying to do. And I don't know if this is they're really trying to make their Antichrist, or are they trying to make their image, because they're going to give life unto the image. And he told me that every time they've done this, the people that they're experimenting with are dying. And he said they're even using DNA from Nephilim giants. And of course, I remember, when, I won't call his name, but when he asked the owner, he said, where would you get Nephilim DNA from in the first place to even cross all this together? And he told him, he says, we're Israel. We have access to anything in the world we want. But I would really like to get some of your thoughts on this one here, because some of these things are like way in left field.
Yeah, I got a few, but I'm happy to do a little speculative. I have a few ideas. We might have to kick the can for another time on some of those.
Right.
But there's a lot of stuff with black goo and that kind of idea that comes into this as well.
Yes, I have interviewed a German scientist
Harold
about black goo.
Harold has been to our office several times, and we've and Harold. I will say this about Harold. I know a lot of people don't. They got, especially believers, have some mixed opinions,
of course.
but they have to understand what we look for is information. We're still a news channel, so we're looking for information. I don't hold it against the guy if he's not. I mean, I'd rather him to be one, but I want to know what he knows from the inside, and that's why we interviewed him. But Harold said to us even privately, we didn't speak about this publicly, they tried to get him involved in the CERN project, and he was apprehensive. So he said they took him and let him meet the entities they were working with, hoping that would encourage him to come on board, because he's a very brilliant scientist. And
well, I don't know, some people say there's a lot of blackmail on him everywhere, so I'm not sure, but he is a scientist as far as we know. But yes, the black goo that he was mentioning, it's under every Catholic altar. And I mean, he was just mentioning it's in these mega churches as well, everywhere under the altar where they preach. I was like, because it has
In
certain
Mecca as well.
frequencies that it gives power to these preachers. I mean, it's just a really wild, crazy stuff. But anyway, we don't want to go off the subject too much, but go ahead.
But that is a funny thing about the word frequency, because I do think this gas magic has been tweaked enough. It is really about adjusting the frequency, the collective frequency between us and the ethereal realm. And at the same time, we're being deceived by that realm. We're building this beast.
Exactly.
What would you tell our listeners? About 80% of them are brothers and sisters in Christ who are genuinely worried about what is going on right now. They can't trying to understand it. Some of them are very well aware of what is going on, very afraid, most of them. But I think that in your book you have offered as well some solutions, and also on your videos. I know your YouTube channel is not big. I don't know, maybe you just started it not too long time ago, but I watched some few of your videos, and you have encouraged Christian people tremendously. You have explained that the door out of here is Christ. So I would like for you to talk about solutions for us and how we are, what we are to do right now.
Well, I'll try to get to the point of that. Again, I mean, the beginning and end of this whole cosmic story has to do with accepting that our consciousness is the image of God, or a very important facet of the image of God. The ethereal realm wants to come and kill, steal, and destroy that from you. And at the end of the day, especially if we are getting into these times, it's all about you trading that in for something else. So, when you're going to get into deep state stuff, people always want to say, what are you going to do about it? It's all about your consciousness. And the whole world can change from it. People just don't realize the power of just trading in one belief system for a biblical belief system, a true, simplistic, biblical belief system. So wherever you're at with your walk, open up your heart and mind, transfer, just if you're in that state of anxiety or fear, throw it on the Lord and invite him into your life, and allow yourself to be transformed in Christ.
Yes.
And he'll give you the words, he'll give you the action, he will walk with you, and you will be transformed. And the outcome of this is that you will live with an imperishable body for eternity in the light of Christ.
Yes.
Amen.
Amen. Beautiful. Talk a little bit about where is the kingdom, if you don't mind.
The kingdom is, in the Old Testament, are shadows and forms that walk into the kingdom. There was a physical Jerusalem. There's a physical temple. And in some sense, I think there's a real tree of life. But with the death, resurrection, and ascension of Christ, those things now are spiritual things, and they have to be thought of that. And when Christ divorced the covenant people, they were separated from them, so their project, they take it upon themselves through their own deification to realize this earthly Jerusalem. So you got to get that distinction down between the earthly and the heavenly. That's the core of it, and live in the spirit.
Yes, and I read some of the commentaries. That's what helped me tremendously to realize that Christianity is Judaized, and Christians are taught Zoharic prophecies, and prophecies that are already fulfilled, that are put into the future. And that has totally changed the whole outlook of Christians and their basic faith and this original Christian faith. So it's kind of like a virus in a Christianity today, and that's what it brought us to what you see right now around you, what's happening. and it's gonna get a lot worse, I think. But we have to realize that the kingdom is a spiritual kingdom, and there is a heavenly city, not earthly city, right? And
right.
Dr. Hogan, he's our brother in Christ. He's speaking into details, great details about these things we have just talked about in his book, and as well as your solutions as being a Christian, what you are to do. But is there anything else you would like to discuss?
Oh, I do.
Okay, so maybe I should give you and Steve some word here.
How about this? My dad's out in the barbecue out here. I might be limited to one question.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll
He's
do-
kind
when
of
we
waiting
get
for
back-
everybody to get together.
Yeah, okay.
So I might have to limit it to one question for now. I would love if we had the opportunity to do this again.
Yes, let's
yes.
definitely when you get back home, maybe
Okay.
in the next few days or whatever, however that works out, or a week from now, whatever. Me and you are going to go over chapter 9, detail by detail, verse
Okay.
by verse.
The blockchain of being, chapter 9 in detail.
I'm trying to remember. I'll have to kind of refresh myself.
Well,
Yes.
let's just do like this.
Oh, that's very heavy on Eric Fogelin.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I rely heavily on Eric Fogelin for that chapter, I believe, or is that 10? I might be getting confused right now.
In your book, there is a picture of Saphiro tree with the serpent in here.
I wanted to make sure you get one with the serpent in it.
I know. That's
It's like the Kundalini thing, right?
The
So just to
Kundalini.
really drive home the point.
Yes.
Right. That drives the
It's
point.
not Christian stuff.
No, this is that sorcery. That's the Kabbalah and the sorcery that is unleashed right now. And but anyway.
But then I'll just do one question now.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And then
Go for it.
we'll close it out with this here. I'd like to
Okay.
get your thoughts if you've actually. I'm not sure, Doug, if you've looked into this as well yourself, but when we look at the Qumranite community, wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they talk about the sons of darkness and the sons of light, and of course the war that they believe that they would have with them. We know that they're referring to the sons of darkness as the Pharisees, the sages, the Sadducees that were in power up in Jerusalem at that time, and I guess they considered themselves the true Zadok priest. All right, with that in mind, though, I think about the sons of darkness, and then I look back into Genesis, where when God writes, or Moses writes the narrative of creation, and he said he put a firmament between the light, the or, and the darkness, the choshek. And I always thought it was fascinating how similar the word darkness and nachash, choshek and nachash are, and the fact that it is an allegory, obviously, that there was a firmament or a separation between light and darkness, or between good and evil, and how that the Qumranite community perceived this through the Pharisees, coupled with the fact that Jesus himself referred to them as, in the Hebrew Matthew, he doesn't actually just say generation of vipers, which still can be translated the same. He says Nechashim Zara Sofanim, which is the seed of vipers. And I'd like to see what your thought is on these things.
Well, yeah, I know you took a little bit of heat for that research, but I do think that there's some good stuff in there, and I do not know it that well. The only thing, what I would speak to about the firmament, yes, I think it shuts off. I think it's real, and I think it does shut dimensions between the first and second heaven. That's my take on that. But in closing, God created these firewalls between our dimensions, between our realm and the ethereal realm, and firewalls between our consciousness. And so, again, in thinking about this, to preserve those firewalls in our own consciousness, so that we're not seeking or going into the ethereal realm. And I'm unfortunately not addressing the community you're speaking of very well. But that is kind of a closing thought of how precious that there are places that are sort of forbidden to us, and I get curious, and I like extra biblical sources and the idea of a pre-Adamic world or mysteries that might have happened inside of the garden, deep history, and even parts about the astral world or the subatomic world. But I do think we're kind of at some point playing with barriers and firewalls, and I'm curious that way, and I like extra biblical text, and I have a little, I enjoy some Zen Garcia now and again, but that community, I'd hate to actually address that because
Right.
I know more about it from you than from many.
It's
from
the,
anything
it's
else.
the same thing for me. It's because, like I've tell people all the time, there's many things I would disagree with on the Qumranite community in the first place. It's more so for me to get an idea of what their mindset, what their thoughts were, and of course, to me, how easily they should have been able, and I don't know what the real story is, how they should have believed that Jesus was the Messiah, because a lot of their thinking and what he preached and what John preached were similar. They're not the same, but they're similar. And so that's why I was looking at the allegory in Genesis and the way they thought about it as far as that darkness. And then, of course, there being the serpent being a night creature pretty much anyway, so it just kind of...
It's intriguing, and I wouldn't be very... I would hesitate to kind of go there because of the limitations I have with that literature. But, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But what I remember from my research about that community was that, and I'm not saying they're right or wrong or whatever, but they have separated from the Pharisees because of the calendar they disagreed with, because supposedly Pharisees kept a Babylonian false pagan calendar, and they disagreed with them, called them sons of darkness. And then, of course, similarities is that Jesus did call them serpents and vipers and sons of the devil.
Yeah, they had some wacky ideas themselves.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
If we ever got a chance to do this again, because you all have really explored this, but you might have noticed that, Edom, and that's something we should be fascinated by.
Yes.
This mass depopulation purging based on the idea of Edom. And my take on that's classic inversion, taking the job of Christ at the end of the day, separating the wheat and the tares and the sheep and the goats. And again, the inversion would be that human beings take that job in deciding who should live and who should die, based upon... It's a perfect inversion. No, you're the Edomite.
We're going to get into that tares.
And again, what about the perfect? Jacob. We're Jacob when we're in Christ. The inheritance was it was heavenly Jerusalem.
Yes.
Of course, he did inhabit Jerusalem, and that was overtaken by Edom. But that's the spiritualization of the concept.
Yes, exactly. And you do speak about Edom here, and you are right about inversion, because right now the Pharisees are saying that Christianity is Edom, which is inversion of reality.
That's right.
Who Edom is. Edomites are come from Herod. Herod was Edomite and persecuted Christ. That's the one that wanted to kill babies from 2 and under.
Right.
Beheaded
John. Just these Hebrew roots people should expect that are the apologists for this kind of thing.
Yes.
Deanne Loper this week, I think it was a reprinting or an extension. There's a website called His Heavenly Kingdom, Christian Observer, and her take really, first of all, just saying how that's fiction, the idea of Edom being Rome, and then really looking at the historical and scriptural text to kind of get straight on that. She did a good job of laying that out.
Yeah. They don't like Deanne's name. I see that. They mess up his audio when he said Deanne.
Yes, they're really messing up your audio. So as we are progressing in interview, the quality is worse and worse.
Under certain words.
Yes.
Oh, listen, Doug, we really appreciate you coming on with us today, and look.
I'm glad we made it happen.
Yes, look forward to another time. So thank you so much. Any closing words, Jana?
I would just highly recommend, even though Amazon is not delivering.
Order it.
right
Have
now.
Amazon backed up with orders. Make them freak out and wonder what in the world is going on with
Right.
this book here.
You can order Brother Hogan's book. You will be blessed by it. You will have to study it, and I'm not saying reading it. I'm talking studying it. That's different. And then also, of course, I want to take opportunity to promote also Kabbalah Secrets Christians Need to Know, highly recommended by Dr. Hogan, as well by our sister in Christ, Deanne Loper.
Yes.
Okay, so
Flood them with both the books because
exactly.
eventually they're going to try to take them off. With the
Yes.
new laws coming, probably they'll take them off.
That's what
So-
I'm afraid of. So maybe you will,
Dr. Hogan,
maybe you will be
yeah.
able to get those books in now, and we are. Thank you so much, Brother Hogan.
You are so welcome. And I just want to part by saying how much I admire you for being on the vanguard of the most important movement in Christianity today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we admire you, and we
Yes.
are very blessed to have you as a
Well,
friend.
the courage, because we know you're
And-
risking a lot to educate the world
and
about
yes,
a very, very serious subject.
Which is,
very few people like yourself, like Deanne, and others.
Yes.
Very few people out there willing to put themselves on the front lines.
yes, and you certainly are on the front lines. Anybody publishing books with truth in it like this cares for humanity, cares for fellow brothers and sisters, and thank you so much for being you, being our brother in Christ.
Yes.
We are honored to have you as a friend and as our brother in Christ, and we are going to pray for all of you and for you, for your family, to be in safety in the arms of Jesus Christ. And we are, we love you. We really do love
That
you.
means a lot to me.
Yes. Thank you so much. And we hope and pray that we can do this again together and talk in more detail, maybe about several chapters in more detail in a very soon future.
Blessings to you all.
Thank you.
Thank